How was Lucchese crime family captain Paul Vario involved in a mafia war? Let's check it out. I'm James Gladwish and welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today, we are going to take a quick look at how Lucchese mobster Paul Vario was involved in a mafia war. As is well documented, in the early 1960s, family boss Joe Bonanno was allegedly behind a plot to have rival mob bosses Tommy Lucchese and Carlo Gambino murdered. The commission called for Joe Bonanno to come in front of them and explain himself, but he never came. Bonanno also had issues within his own crime family, with a faction of the family upset with his leadership, especially his decision to elevate his underqualified son Salvatore Bill Bonanno to the position of family consigliere. As a result of his behaviour, the commission viewed Joe Bonanno as persona non grata, and would put their support behind the faction of the Bonanno family, led by Gaspar Di Gregorio, that rebelled against Bonanno. The Bonanno family would then enter into a bloody civil war for several years, in the mid to late 1960s. So, how was Lucchese crime family captain Paul Vario involved in the Bonanno family conflict? Lucchese mobster Paul Vario was close with Bonanno family mobster Michael Sabella. In 1967, Bonanno family soldier turned active informant Willie Dara would interestingly state that he took orders not only from Sabella, but also from Paul Vario. In the following file extract, Willie Dara is the informant, but to disguise this, he is referred to as a subject of the information, rather than as the man who was providing the intelligence. The FBI file reads, MMT1 advised in August 1967 that William Joseph Dara, also known as Willie Dara and Willie the Tilemaker, is a soldato, soldier in the Bonanno family. This information advised that Dara is considering leaving the Bonanno family to join the Lucchese family, however is awaiting orders from his capo, Mike Sabella, regarding this situation. Dara takes orders from Mike Sabella and from Paul Vario. It is interesting to read that Willie Dara, who was a Bonanno family soldier, received orders from Paul Vario, who we know was a Lucchese crime family captain. It would perhaps appear that Willie Dara was confused as to which family Vario was actually in. In another file, Dara seems to indicate that Vario was with the Bonannos, which is inaccurate. But even still, it would seem strange that Lucchese captain Paul Vario was giving orders to a Bonanno family soldier. Perhaps this is an indication of the closeness between Sabella and Vario, that Willie Dara thought that Paul Vario was in the Bonannos. Michael Sabella was one of the Bonanno family mobsters who rebelled against family boss Joseph Bonanno. As a result, Joe Bonanno put a contract out on the life of Michael Sabella. As one FBI file states, Mike Sabella still fearful of leaving residence, since knows of contract for him issued by Bonanno. Lucchese crime family captain Paul Vario would fall out with his old friend Michael Sabella, after Sabella was deciding to switch his allegiance back to the Joseph Bonanno faction, after one of Sabella's friends, Bonanno soldier Michael Consolo, was killed by mobsters loyal to Joseph Bonanno. As an FBI file reads, Paul Vario, Lucchese family LCN, uses the name Rubenstein. Vario and Mike Sabella were fighting because Sabella went to the Bonanno family LCN. Sabella became quite disturbed over killings in New York City involving Bonanno people who had defected and had left that family in 1968. The final blow came when one of Sabella's closest friends, Michael Consolo, was killed under a Bonanno contract. In January 1968, an informant would state that Paul Vario became instrumental in the discussions about what to do with the troublesome Joseph Bonanno. and Vario would host a meeting at his Long Island residence to discuss the Joseph Bonanno situation, as well as discussing who was to become the new head of the Lucchese crime family, after family boss Tommy Lucchese had passed away a few months before. As an FBI file states, meeting to be held at Long Island residence of Paul Vario, Lucchese family. All attendees will arrive by boat. Noted, Vario maintains residence on shore. Date of meeting will be late May or early June next. Informant states he will probably attend. Purpose of meet is to decide permanent heads of Lucchese family. Henceforth, all LCN families are to be headed by 2 individuals rather than 1. Head of Lucchese Group Pro Tem is Joe Palisades. However, meeting will determine permanent bosses. Other problem to be resolved is that of Joe Bonanno. Bonanno has no chance to be allowed back in LCN, according to informant. In April 1968, Paul Vario travelled down to Miami to meet with Michael Sabella, who he had fallen out with. Vario would also meet with Lucchese mobsters Ettore Coco and James Jimmy Doyle Plumeri. At these Miami meetings, it would appear that Paul Vario healed his rift with his old friend Michael Sabella. As one FBI file states, MM1231CTE reported that Paul Vario, capo in the Lucchese family LCN, arrived in Miami on April 16, 1968, and checked into the Beachcomber Motel, Miami Beach, under the name Rubenstein. 2 days later, he left the Beachcomber and registered into the Dunes Motel, Miami Beach. Vario departed Miami on April 20, 1968, and returned to Miami on April 22, 1968, and is staying at the Dunes as of April 24, 1968. He will return to New York momentarily. While in Miami, Vario has been in contact with Mike Sabella, Ettore Coco, James Plumeri, and the informant. Informant states that Mike Sabella, who had previously defected from the Bonanno family and joined Vario, has returned to the Bonanno family after the last series of killings in New York City, especially that of Michael Consolo, described by an informant as one of Sabella's closest associates. As a result of Sabella's recanting, he and Vario had a falling out, but the past series of visits by Vario to Miami has brought them back together. As mentioned, Paul Vario was planning a meeting at his Long Island residence to discuss what to do about Joseph Bonanno. And, according to an informant, Vario stated that he and others were trying to find a peaceful resolution with Joseph Bonanno, rather than continue the violence. An FBI file reads, Vario states that instead of a council of war as planned at the Vario Long Island residence in May or June, the meeting will concern itself with making peace between Bonanno and the other factions. And so, throughout the summer of 1968, a series of meetings were held at Paul Vario's Long Island residence and also on his boat, where the Joseph Bonanno situation was discussed. An informant would report to the FBI. redacted CTE advised 4 last, returned from New York City September 2 last, and reported on 4-day La Cosa Nostra conference attended by informant in Long Island. Approximately 13 leaders of the Bonanno and Gambino families in attendance. Subject matter related to Bonanno situation. LCN members in attendance who had not yet decided as to loyalty to Bonanno were told to give the matter serious consideration, as Bonanno is definitely out of the situation and is a dead man. This also applies to William Bonanno. Informant pointed out that William Bonanno was victim of attempted hit recently. Among other attendees at conference were Mike Sabella, Paul Vario, Carmine Tramunti, John Angelo. Bonanno family to either be merged with Carlo Gambino, or family will be taken over by one of several candidates, the most prominent being Tramunti. Bonanno presently in hiding, whereabouts unknown to informant. We can see from the file that despite the fact that Paul Vario had previously said that the meetings were not going to be a council of war, and that they were aiming for peace with Joseph Bonanno, the attitudes of those involved had changed. One of the mobsters who attended these meetings was Carmine Mr. Gribbs Tramunti, who was the new head of the Lucchese family. And from what we can see in the file, it was decided that Joseph Bonanno was a dead man, and his son, Salvatore Bill Bonanno, was also marked for death. It is also interesting to see that at these meetings that Paul Vario hosted, they were deciding whether the Bonanno family would be merged with the Gambino family or the Lucchese family under Carmine Tramunti. Ultimately, Joseph Bonanno wasn't killed, and he went into exile in Arizona, and the Bonanno family would move forward under new leadership. Regardless, it is interesting to see that Lucchese mobster Paul Vario, who was portrayed as the character Paulie Cicero in the movie Goodfellas, was a prominent individual in the discussions around the conflict with Joseph Bonanno. In the comments below, let me know your thoughts on the topic covered in this video. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.